How much does it cost to buy a house? Well, today's video is I'm going to go through it with you step by step on how much it costs to buy a house. But two things before we start. Number one, remember, these videos are an open format. Comment below, whatever you want to comment. The experience you had in buying a house, what it cost you to buy a house. This is why I do this, right? I do all these videos are either pros and cons or looking at different things in different ways, but it's always about free comments and tell us what your opinions and your, home buying experience was. Number two, buying a house has different costs in different markets. When you were buying a house in 2021 in the craziest seller's market in the history of the world, the cost to buy a house was drastically more expensive because you definitely were paying closing costs, but you definitely were paying out-of-pocket appraisal gaps, which we'll get into in this video. But I'm going to do this not in like a buyers or sellers. I'm just kind of doing it to show you the different costs involved in buying a house. And then I'll kind of go over it with you to say you could save in this market, it's going to cost you in this market, and so on. So with that being said, let's take a trip together to buy a house for $400,000, okay? So if we're buying a $400,000 house, first and foremost, remember, VA buyers, they're the only people that you can have 0% down, but I'm going to do this as if you were just getting a conventional loan and putting the least amount down, 3%, and then we'll move forward. So let's say you're looking to buy a $400,000 house, okay? Let me move the microphone over. All right. So your down payment would be 3%. First and foremost, the down payment does not come right away. This is at the end, like a day or 2 or 3 days before you're going to wire over your money to purchase the house, okay? Closing cost. When you buy a house through a loan, you have closing costs. Now, are there closing costs when you buy a house cash? Yes. They're very, very tiny. So on a $400,000 house, and I can do a separate video about the breakdown of closing costs are roughly 3%. So what's the difference between down payment and closing costs? Down payment goes towards principal. So if you're buying a $400,000 house, you're putting $12,000 towards principal. Closing costs are like nonsense fees, right? It's not going towards principal. It's washed away money. It's gone. Bye-bye. It stinks. Again, we'll talk about how you can get this credit and whatnot. These two are combined, and they will go towards the end of the loan. Escrow. Escrow is like a good faith deposit that you put down when buying a house. It obviously can drastically be different from 1% or more. I'm just doing this on average. So escrow deposit is due within the first 3 calendar days. So I'm going to do this slow so everyone understands. I'm looking to buy a $400,000 house. I really love this house. I go in the contract. In 3 calendar days, I'm going to put 1% down, right? Which is $4,000. That $4,000 will be credited towards these at the end, which when you have to, buy the house, you're going to put the rest of the money down. So this stays with the title company, the escrow, the $4,000 good faith deposit. Yes, it can be refunded back to you and all that, but we're not talking about that now. There's other fees. What other fees are there? Well, you have inspection. This can change. I just did this as an average. Your home inspection is going to come right away pretty much. I always say get the home inspection done right away. That's going to be roughly around $500. The bank's going to have you order an appraisal. Again, you can comment below saying my appraisal wasn't that expensive or maybe you paid more. Again, this is just average. That's about $500, okay? So when you're buying a house, this is kind of a good estimate to look at. Now, can you put more money down? Absolutely. Again, I'm just doing 3% like as a conventional loan. 3% is the average closing cost. 1% in this market, average escrow deposit, and just averagely these out. Okay, let's go over this one more time. I love this house. I want to buy it. I'm in contract. 1% goes in the first 3 calendar days. It sits there. You do the inspection. You get the appraisal done. Everything looks good. We're ready to close on the house. The rest of your money minus the escrow is due at closing. Okay. So the one thing that's important to understand is, the one thing that's important to understand is this. Closing cost right here is one thing that can be negotiated when you're buying a house. So for instance, if I'm sitting here and I'm trying to buy your $400,000 house, I can say to you, I'll give you XYZ. I'll give you $400,000, let's say. But you, the seller, you're going to credit me that 3% closing cost. In a buyer's market, I have control as a buyer. So I can start negotiating different fees. So I can say, I want you to credit that to me. And if the seller is like, yeah, okay, which most of them are, to be honest with you, then you can wipe this one right away and say, boom, I just saved myself right there, $12,000 because I negotiated the seller to credit that to me. So that's a way right there to save money buying a house, big time. You're not going to be able to negotiate the down payment because that's between you and the bank. The escrow can be negotiated, right? So like in a seller's market, they might ask for 5%. But in a buyer's market, you might even get away with putting $1,000 down. The problem with escrow is when you put escrow down on a house, it just stays within the title company. And there's so many ways for that money in theory in the contract to be refunded back to the buyer, whether it's inspection, whether if it doesn't appraise, or if you can't get the mortgage, you have a certain amount of time to get your finances together. So the money really never goes to the seller. I barely ever see it get, credited back to the seller. So many laws and so many different variables in play. So a lot of times it's like, okay, I'm just going to put this money in escrow, and then if the deal dies, I'm going to get it back anyway. So why am I going to put all this money in there, right? So escrow is a good faith deposit. That's all it is, good faith deposit. And then let's say you put $1,000, let's just say, and at the end of the loan, you have to put I don't want to confuse you here. Follow me here. If you put $1,000 into escrow, and let's say at the end of the deal, you owe $20,000 to buy the house, it would be $20,000 minus the $1,000, leaving you with $19,000. Okay? So that could be negotiated. What I want you to pay attention on is two things about buying a house that people don't tell you. One, transaction fees. They are the biggest fees in the world. That's when your agent tries to make up some baloney to say, I also charge a transaction fee of $300 or $500 or blah, 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 because it has to do with the paperwork and my company. It's all excuses. Buyers, don't pay a transaction fee. You can tell the agent, no, I'm not paying a transaction fee. Sorry, I'm not paying it, okay? I would never, and I have never in my life charged a transaction fee. The other thing that's important nowadays is to understand how commission works with agents. So agents are going to have you sign an agreement with commission. The agents are trying to go after the seller for their commission. If they don't get their commission that they want, they can charge you the difference. Pay attention to that stuff. We are different agents. I'm not going to get into detail, but we make sure we take care of everyone. You have to realize as a buyer that in a buyer's market, you are in control. There's fees that you have to pay, right? Like down payment. You have to put money down unless you're a VA, right? You could put more money down if you want. You got to pay for home inspection. You got to pay for an appraisal unless the appraisal is waived. You have to put money down to escrow, right? But you necessarily do not have to pay all your closing costs if you have a good deal and you can negotiate that really well. By the way, video coming soon. Closing cost credits versus lower house offer. So like, let's say $400,000 with closing costs or $380 with no closing costs. Video coming soon. So there's certain things that you have to pay and there's certain things you do not have to pay. So you have to understand, this is why I'm here for you guys. Stop getting convinced that you have to pay these crazy transaction fees and all that other stuff. So buying a house is simple. It's just a breakdown of a couple things. If you guys have any questions, let me know. I want you guys to ask comments in these videos, right? Hey, I got a question about this. I got a question about this. Is there other fees like surveys and different things? There could be other little things like termite inspection and some other variables in play. But this is just mostly everything there is. Your purchase price is, here's your purchase price. You got your down payment, your closing costs, your escrow, your inspections, and your appraisals, pretty much, right? So at the end of the day, real estate's easy. It's fun. It's exciting, especially when you work with agents that know what they're doing and they just understand everything. And that's what we're here for. So any questions you have, please let me know. Comment below if you have any questions, and I'll talk to you soon.